Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in as always. So after numerous requests, I finally went down and picked up a Paramilitary 2 to do size comparisons with. A lot of you guys were asking. It had been on my mind. I knew I was going to do it, but what I was waiting for was just the right Para 2 to essentially excite me enough to buy it. Owned a Para 2 a couple years back. I got it in the heyday of the Paramilitary 2s where Spyderco couldn't keep up with production and they were actually going for like 150, 160 on the secondary market. They saw an increase in price because demand was very, very high and supply was quite low. So I picked one up. I was underwhelmed by the knife in comparison with a lot of the Taichung offerings that I owned at the time, which were a bit more premium, like the Gale Bradley 1, the Spyderco Navaja. Just didn't love it, so after a couple weeks I essentially offloaded it for exactly what I paid for it and kind of moved on from there. But so many of you guys like this knife and wanted me to use it for a size comparison that I'm like, okay, I've got to find one that I want, and thankfully I found one in the exact configuration that I want from a company called Flytanium. And they make aftermarket parts for various knives, including the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, just as you see here. So we're going to go through. I'm going to talk about Flytanium, the company, the scales here. I'm not going to review the Para 2. Again, it's been reviewed to death. It's been an extremely popular knife, full flat grind, excellent cutting performance, great ergonomics. The compression lock is very user friendly since you don't have to put your hand in front of the blade to disengage it. And price point, I think the right around the $110 mark, the Para 2 has been very, very popular because of the price point. Also, a lot of people prefer washers to bearings because they feel like it's more hard use. Whatever. Point is, this has been an incredibly popular knife, and so a lot of you understandably wanted me to use it for a size comparison. So this version has, of course, the S30V blade with the DLC coating. I opted for the plain titanium stonewashed handles because I really like the titanium and the black contrast, especially with full black hardware here on the knife. It just, I don't know, it ties in perfectly, looks fantastic, and feels really good. So let's talk about the specs for a moment, not on the Para 2, but on the Flytanium scales. So a normal Para 2 weighs 3.75 ounces. This Para 2 with the titanium scales does weigh in at 5.28 ounces, so we've got an ounce and a half surplus, as compared with the normal G10 scales. It also moves the balance point on the knife. Para 2s are known to be, a little bit blade heavy. This one, because of titanium scales, has a balance point right here. So, not quite at the finger choil. It's a tiny bit further back right there, but fairly well balanced overall. And the scales are actually quite comfortable. So I did pick this one up from Blade HQ, kind of surfing around their website on my lunch at work, saw the exact configuration that I wanted, wandered down, handled it for a couple minutes, and then left with it. I did want to handle it before I bought it, just to make sure that the scales were well made, that there weren't any hot spots, that the knife could actually be centered with the scales. There are a lot of knife modders out there who make aftermarket scales, things of that sort, but you run into problems every so often as far as the fit and the finish. The Para 2 scales are notoriously difficult to make and to mill. Let me show you guys why here. So as you can see, it has fully nested liners in the G10, plus another portion here nested even further for the lock bar. So not the easiest scales to make or to mill out. So some, custom scale makers have had problems making these, not to mention lead times, poor customer communication, price, all those things. There's a lot of variability with, having custom scales made. So when a company produces them and they sell them through, online retailers like Blade HQ and GP Knives and Knife Center. The nice thing is you can, if you want it, you can just go, look at the price. If it looks good, you can buy it. No haggling, no wait time, and thankfully the quality, the fit, and the finish is really nice on this one. So no concerns there after having this one for a few weeks here now. Anyhow, some different things I want to talk about with with this knife. The first being, is it worth it, and why would you spend what is almost double the price on a Para 2 just to have titanium scales? And for me, being quite particular in my tastes, I needed something different. A regular Para 2, again, I just didn't want to pick it up and then feel the need to offload it in a couple of weeks, since there's a specific purpose in terms of size comparisons. Now, as far as the guy behind the company, we'll talk about that for a second, because I think his response was quite interesting as well. But Flytanium is actually owned by a guy named Jacob Knudsen, and he works at Blade HQ. He's worked there for a couple of years. I think he does their advertising, media, something along those lines. But anyhow, this is his company, and it's not a joint venture with Blade HQ at all. It's him and his wife, and he just happens to work at Blade HQ. Now, his background is in industrial design. Both of his parents are full-time artists, so, kind of flows in the blood, so to say. But when I asked him, I said, why would people go out and spend, what is extra money improving a knife that is, quote unquote, a lot of people would consider perfect? And to him, he said, a lot of people want custom knives, but they can't afford them. And being able to go out and get some really nice titanium scales or, something like that kind of fills that need for them, where they get something special without having to fork out, big bucks for it. He also said a lot of people, especially with a knife like the Para 2, they've had it for a couple of years, they love it, but they want something new. They're looking for something a little bit different, and what this does is this allows them to refresh the knife, and they still get to keep a knife they love, but it makes it different enough that they feel like they've got something new in hand. And I think those are both quite valid responses as to why. Is it worth the money? I mean, to me, yes, because I wouldn't have bought one otherwise. Is it worth it to someone who's had the knife for a couple of years and wants to make it different or special? I think that's a very valid reason to spend the money as well. But again, you guys may differ, but there seems to be enough interest that it's keeping the company intact or afloat. So, yeah. All right. Now, as far as where they're made, some parts are made overseas, some parts are made here. Aside from the Para 2 and the different material scales, they also do, I think they have 12 different handle variants for the Benchmade 51, which is a balisong. They have different scales for the Kershaw Skyline. They are working on titanium scales for the Benchmade Griptilian full size right now. And then they have some full production knives in the works, as well as at least one or potentially more collaborations coming up with different manufacturers. So they've got a lot going on. But let me show you guys kind of up close. Edges are nicely chamfered, no hot spots. The screws are properly nested. You still have access to the jimping here a little bit, so the height is good, so it doesn't cut that off at all. Essentially they look to be an exact replica, just done in titanium, so the fit and the finish is really good on this one. Again, no problems at all. Now, some of them do come pre-assembled, with the Flytanium scales, such as Blade HQ or GP Knives, and Blade HQ and GP actually takes apart the standard Para and puts on the Flytanium scales, and that way they sell it, completely assembled and ready to go, which is how I picked this one up, which was nice, because I just threw it in my pocket and I didn't have to go home and take everything apart and reassemble. Not that it's a big deal, but, let's be honest, time saving is time saving. So, anyways, that is pretty much it with the Flytanium scales on the Paramilitary 2 here. If I was going to get something next for them, it would probably be Benchmade 51 with titanium scales or whatnot. The Benchmade 51 in its stock configuration isn't the best flipper with the G10 handles, but when you upgrade it to some titanium or brass handles, it actually improves the flipping action quite a bit, according to some of the the hardcore balisong guys who really like the variants of the 51 the Flytanium does. So, alright guys, we will leave it there. Look at the one offering from Flytanium on the Paramilitary 2. I really like it, really happy. I see this being a long-term keeper and user because it's different and exciting enough for me. So thanks so much for watching. Comments or questions, let me know. All pertinent links will be down in the description box below. And of course, you can follow me on Instagram as Epic Snuggle Bunny for more daily content. Thanks guys, take care.